The sun will come out tomorrow. I don't usually perform on stages, but this was pretty cool. All right, let me just start so we can have lots of time for addressing answers and questions at the end. I know several of you, but I don't know if you all know me. My name is Anita Poulin. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been an OT since 1974, and I'm 21. That's it. Ain't going any older, ain't getting any younger. I'm not used to all this video stuff. I tend to wander and talk a lot, but evidently you guys are ghost audience members, so that'll be fun anyway. So if you have questions, anytime interrupt with questions if you don't understand where I'm going to go. Most of tonight, what I've heard for months and years, actually, since 1991, I've had kids OT in this community. I've worked with early intervention, I've worked with public school systems, so I kind of know the needs in this community because parents talk. And they share their fears, and they share their needs, and they share their wants for their community, and most of all, their children, and what they want in public school settings, because it is their tax dollars that are paying the salaries. So sometimes needs get shifted, and kids get fallen in the cracks. So one of the areas that are big discussion in school districts now is sensory integration. Everybody's about sensory. But if you really think about sensory integration, everyone in this room is a sensory being. We all have sensory integration issues. And if you give me a little while, I can start pointing out yours just by watching you from standing up here, because we have them little and big. The issue becomes when we're little, we're not supposed to wiggle. Unfortunately, wiggling is part of their learning at the younger ages. Even as adults, people don't always like. Do you hear that a lot in meetings? And then it escalates with other sounds, and that's in rooms of adults. Even the din that's in here can be very bothersome to people who have sensory deficits. That doesn't mean they have a sensory integration disorder. A true sensory integration disorder is that it is not autism and a sensory integration disorder. It's autism with sensory processing difficulties. But sensory integration disorder is truly a disorder that does not have any other idiosyncrasies or characteristics of other diagnoses. It's just a child who's functioning with a lot of difficulties and a lot of developmental delays, but really doesn't fit characteristically in any other spectrum or disorder. Those are our kiddos with true sensory processing disorders. Okay, so once that's out, all people have sensory processing issues. Again, remember I said that in the beginning. So I'm going to break down sensory processing, modulation, and the behavioral stuff a little more clearly so you guys maybe get in my mental realm of thinking. When I think of sensory processing, or you think of sensory processing, processing is like an input, right? It's how something goes in and gets tolerated. So what are some of the sensory systems that we have? Visual, touch. Okay, so I'm going to abbreviate visual, touch,
Hearing.
Auditory.
Kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic, yeah. We forget that one a lot, don't we? What is kinesthetic? Do you understand kinesthetic? Kinesthetic is kind of like what you guys are in this video. Voodoo, ghosts. It's internal workings of your body that have a lot to do with a lot of things, but not necessarily can be seen or addressed. What am I doing? And that comes from our joints and our muscles is where we get the kinesthetic. So we got visual, touch, auditory, gravity, vestibular. Oh, you guys are really on track here. Some of you must have been in my classes. And vestibular. Okay, that's all part of our sensory input. Our vestibular system is your whole structure inside your inner ear. All those little semicircular canals inside the ear. You got 3 of them. They're all filled with fluid. So this is all fluid inside. And every time you move, that fluid moves, and it sends messages off to your brain and says, oops, you're going forward. And your body responds kinesthetically with your protective responses. So if I trip and I go to fall, protective responses. It's the loop that's in the front that told my body that through my kinesthetic understanding of processing information. Okay? So, visual, touch, auditory, muscle, vestibular. I had to think there for a minute myself. It's been a long day. We've been seeing kids all afternoon. Taste. Okay? Biggest areas of concern is when you see issues there and when you see issues there. Touch and taste. 2 highest areas of input in your body that tell us where we are in space, where we are in movement, where we are anywhere, even in sitting. I call this stuff input. Did I spell that right? Input. Okay. Throughput. I should have brought my slides. Throughput. All the messages that go inside my brain, my poor brain, and it needs to decipher out what to do with that. What should I do with all that stuff that just came in? Put it together and then give us our output, which is usually a behavior or an emotion. So if you stop and you think about tripping and falling, what's happening inside your body internally? What happens to you? Yeah, you kind of freak, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a startle reflex. That produces adrenaline, okay? Now think, I hear a buzz in this room. Anybody else hear a buzz in this room? It's annoying the heck out of me. But I know my auditory system and I know how to keep my self together, but this noise is really bugging the heck out of me up here. I don't know how loud you hear it there, but it's a hum that's crazy. And if I stayed in this room for hour after hour after hour, my fight or flight is going to escalate. And when I get home, my husband might have to be careful because I might throw something at him. Emotional responses. You got to deal with that, okay? Biggest problem with our kids, right here. This is where they come to our clinic a lot, and this is where they come to your classrooms a lot. They're on high arousal. Think about getting up in the morning, hurry up and have your breakfast, hurry up and get dressed, and then you gotta blah, 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 da, 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 da. Oh, and now you're in school. And does it stop? No, it gets even busier. Now I got to take my shoes off and my coat off and get in my desk and pay attention and have all my arousal and attentional levels right here perfectly for all of you. Okay? And oh, by the way, I'm only 3 and 5 years old, and I'm not supposed to be able to control my arousal and attentional levels anyway because my body is growing and developing and I need to move. I don't need to be barraged by all this sensory input fluxation, and then told, sit still. Okay? But we do it. And we do it because we're good teachers and we're good clinicians and we want the best for our children and they need to learn. And this is my curriculum and this is what I have to do and they need to sit to learn. And my question is, why? Can't I be jumping on a trampoline and paying attention? How many teachers have had kids you say, oh my God, I don't know how, they just can't stop moving their bodies, but they've learned everything you taught in that classroom, right? Why do we have to have children sitting? We're taking them out of their ultimate developmental level. Never mind the sensory stuff that goes on. That's another whole ball of wax. That just adds a lot of this behavioral and emotional stuff behind because that adrenaline response is building up and building up and building up. And most of these kids are very intelligent and they know mommy said if I don't listen to the teacher and sit still, then I'm not going to go to McDonald's. So I'm going to try my best to sit still and be right here all day long. But, oh my God, that noise over there. And how much learning is happening? Okay? Because you got a bright kid whose body can't interpret anything. So it's trying to survive. Then these kids get on the bus and they get home, and what happens, moms? We got ricochet rabbits and total meltdown kids. Crying and falling on the floor because home is safe. And that's where I can be me. Because I'm smart and I've learned that I can go to school and hold it together. But what about these poor little guys that can't? Okay? And then the next thing that happens is these guys can't sit still in that chair and they just can't sit still and pay attention. Now remember, just because they're busy doesn't mean they're not attentive. Not necessarily. But because they can't keep their bodies quiet in the chair, we need to look at ADHD. Let's make these little kids what we need them to be. Instead of let the little kids be what they need to be to learn, we're going to help them be what we need them to be to fit into our societal norms. And that's an unfortunate side of things. And the more those MCAS and the more you're teaching those tests, the more our children are paying the consequences in their physical, motor, and sensory development. Because that's what happens. And it's not that anybody did anything right or wrong. Everybody has great intentions. But the one element that means the most for the children is their normal development. Their normal ability to move and learn all of this and adjust to all of this so they can do all of this properly. Because it's not like they don't know what this is. Most of them do know. Okay, so that's like sensory stuff. Any questions on all of that? Was it pretty thorough? Kind of like on my page with sensory stuff? Okay. I want to jump into development a little bit. One of the things about typical development is we develop head to toe. You think of it all the time. And we develop large muscles to small muscles. Okay? Stability in my trunk and all these large muscles equals mobility for my small muscles. And that is only if I can feel my muscles or kinesthetically sense them in space. So some of the children who have issues with that are going to be kids that pound, knock you down, slamming into the floor, slamming into furniture. They don't have a good sense of their body, period. They don't feel their muscles. They don't feel their joints. Okay? Inside, kinesthetically, it's like voids for them. And if you think about the normal neurological development is every movement you make creates a new neurological pathway in your brain. And it needs to be equal to left and right. Because your right brain controls the left side and your left brain controls the right side. And they need to connect to talk. And sometimes that doesn't happen developmentally when the body is allowed to do things out of the norm, such as bum scooting instead of crawling. Okay? Rolling across the floor rather than crawling. My sliders, the belly sliders, that push and slide like little seals along floors. Okay? But they're missing a key element in development because at that stage of the game is when the normal human body integrates your body at midline and your visual midline. Kids that miss that component of development often are our kids that we're servicing now with handwriting issues, coordination issues, visual issues, and not just acuity. When I talk about visual issues for an OT, I'm looking more at oculomotor skills. Do they even separate their eyeball from their head? Can they at least isolate something to target? Can they follow? Okay, and teachers in classrooms, can they copy off a board out of a book? Do dot to dots? There's perceptual issues that are there. Can they pull things out like figure ground? There's a ton of evaluations just for visual, oculomotor, and perception in your system as well that develops. And again, you've got to be able to cross your body midline with your muscles and with your vision. Okay, there are two midlines. The other thing important in development is your dominance. You need to have a consistent dominance. If you're meant to be a righty, then you're going to be a righty. You're going to be right-eyed, right hand, right foot dominant. Okay? If you're a lefty and you're forced to be righty, you could very well end up with dysgraphia or dyslexia. And that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. I actually just did an eval for a 20-year-old on a roll in college, but has dysgraphia, needs extra time for his essays. But he said to me, I was supposed to be a lefty, but they forced me to be a righty. So is he really ambidextrous? Because that's what I hear. I'm ambidextrous. I can use my right hand and I can use my left hand. And I hear lots of moms coming in and reinforcing that too. The unfortunate side of this is you're really not ambidextrous. Your brain has not integrated. And therefore your body is still right and left. And neither the twain is going to meet. Okay? Key functions for children, all levels. Children with autism oftentimes don't skip that developmental level, which I find interesting myself. So, developmentally, we still need to bring these babies down into developmental postures that they skipped over to learn integration of neurological processing skills so they can function and work and learn and have a quiet system. Okay? So it brings me back to chairs at a table. Why do we need chairs at a table? Why can't kids lie on the floor and do writing and learning? That's really my ultimate goal, is to get all teachers to have therapy balls in your classrooms and mats on the floor and the tables up against the walls, and let the kids learn wherever they feel most comfortable. Because will you educate them? Yes, you will. If you force their bodies to do what their bodies are having a trouble with, are they going to learn? No, they're not. They're going to go home and melt down because the teacher's forcing me to sit in the chair 6 hours. And I got in trouble because I talked to my friend and they took away my one only motor break in my life, which is recess. And I exaggerate that way because these are the kids that come to us after school and tell about all of you. These kids come into our clinic and they're very honest and they're open, and we establish that relationship with them because sometimes we're the only people that they actually can say that to. because they're smart enough to know they can't buck the system. They're brilliant little kids. So waking up systems is very important in classrooms. That's a lesson I really want to put in all school districts. And it's up to your OTs. And I hear you guys have just hired a very new OT. She seems to be very wonderful. My interactions with her have been very positive. Not that I'm the judge of the world or anything, but you know, after 21 years, you kind of learn. But I'm very positive about her work with all of you and your children that are there. So any parents that are here that have concerns, I think she knows what she's doing, and I think you're going to be happy with what she brings to your programs out there. And we at Kids OT are always supporting any and all programs in our community. We're trying to do more, but right now we're at where we're at. Developmental issues, back to dominance, is really the two things that are really key, especially in younger classes. How many teachers are in here? Yay for you. Thank you for taking the time off and coming out. That's honorable, and I know teachers work hard. They do. You don't see me teaching in a classroom. Ain't happening. I'll stay with my little 3-people motor groups, thank you very much. You guys got it hard in those classrooms. Use your resources, use your therapists out there. I'm sure they really will support some of the programs that are going on around town. And we're getting more into the developmental learning, okay, for attention and arousal levels. It's key. These children need typical development, and they need typical sensory capabilities. And it's so easy to modify rooms, adjust rooms, some classrooms. These lights drive me crazy everywhere, and they drive most kids crazy. So just think of things in your environment, within your classrooms, even your home. Where do your kids seek to play the most? Where are they looking to get grounded? Under the beds, under the mattress. Hanging out a window, running around the yard, swinging on the trees. Those are areas you want to pay attention to, because those are areas you want to foster in them. If they need to be under that mattress, then put 2 mattresses on them. Okay? Because they're telling you something with that. You're thirsty, you pick up a glass of water and you drink, right? But kids have to say, Mom, can I have a drink? So they're very limiting in a lot of their development too, because they're dependent on us as well. So for us to see their sensory behaviors is a good thing. So if they're coming home and they're running around, let them run around. Let their bodies move and get organized. The one last thing I want to talk about development that I just want to make sure I cover is babies. Our little babies need to come out of those carriers and get on their bellies. Babies can sleep on their backs. I understand that. I've worked in the NICU. I've seen the SIDS scare. I understand it. I truly do. But pediatricians never said, leave them on their backs forever. When they're sleeping, put them on their backs. When they're awake, stick them on their bellies. Get them out of those carriers and walkers and chairs. They're not ready to be there because we develop head to toe. So if I take my little infant baby and stick her on her feet, is that right? We don't want to do that, sending development the wrong way. How many babies do you pick up and you watch do this? Right? Bad sign. You don't want to see that. Okay? That means the back muscles are too strong. They can't get good flexion muscles. Think of it this way. These are your flexion muscles that bring us in. These are all the muscles that bring us out. And it's the balance between the two that keep us upright. 237 muscles to stand still. That's what's required. I don't know about anybody of you, but I can't stand still. How many can stand still? If you got a Wii, there's a good game on the Wii. It's got a candle thing, and you have to sit still for like a minute. We haven't had a kid win it yet. Or staff. because we try everything we do in the clinic. What areas would you like me to cover? I kind of went over all the sensory stuff. I kind of left a lot of time for FAQs because I get a lot of individual cases most of the time. But I can keep teaching. Listen, this mouth can go on forever. But I did kind of work it out so that we'd have a good opportunity to have discussion and answer specific issues within town, school, home, or whatever. But there are two things I like to separate out. I had a son that had special needs, and every night I had to do range of motion to his joints because he had juvenile arthritis. And so as a good OT, you know, I'm going to take care of my child because I'm a good OT. But when he was about 5 years old in an excruciatingly painful evening, he finally looked up at me and said, "Mom." And I said, "What, Jake?" And he said, "When do you think you could be my mother?" Do you think this was a PT lady after that? We went to PT. No more. I was a mother. Mothers be mothers first. Then if you can throw in a few exercises in there, throw in a few exercises in there. Let ABA do ABA. Let OTs do OT. Let children do play. Let them play and let them learn what everybody is jamming in their heads. Because that's the only safe sanction some of our children have is home. And I know that there's pain that goes along with having a child with disabilities because we want them to be the best they can be. We do. And I know that that hurts, but I can't help but express how important it is to be that mom and help them integrate all of the learning that everybody else is barraging them with. And you'll have a ball. It's a lot of fun when kids just come out and play. I used to be structured in my therapies, but unstructure is my attitude lately. They come in and we play, and lo and behold, I got independent toileters where before I had to schedule it on our scheduling picture board. I get independent talkers because it's not a scheduled task that we chose for our PEC system. It's amazing when you just stop being the boss and play. Let's choose whatever we want to play with. There's learning in it. We play in a ball pit, colors, balls, catch, a multitude of things. You don't have to buy a ton of toys for learning. Learn by what you did as a kid. Remember childhood. I think if anything I want to teach parents is come here and come play with us. Come sit down and play and look at the learning that happens in this play. Because that's where it happens, is when they actually can pretend at the kitchen and pretend at dress up and pretend in our jungles and pretend being different people, that we start to integrate everything my teacher taught me and everything my mommy taught me and everything this person taught me, even children with disabilities. I think the best playful children are our children with autism. They come in that room and they just know, we know that they're smart. And then they shine by what they're allowed to get. Some like spinning and swinging, and that makes them come to you. Some like bouncing and jumping and squeezing, and that makes them come out to you. And at school, are they allowed those opportunities to get that movement break so they can come into you? Because the ultimate goal in any therapy and service is to get them to their optimal state for learning, both in attention and arousal. Now, if there's anything I ever want to do in my life is I want to prove this. I want to prove that you spin children with attention deficit disorder, you're going to get a ricochet rabbit. And I can swear by it from my 21 years out there. If you spin a child who truly has a sensory vestibular disorder, you're going to get a kid that's going to sit and be right with you and learn. And it's an amazing thing to watch. I still call it voodoo science to this day, and it's kind of sad we have to say that. It's kind of hard to validate spinning and progress, but you see it all the time. And then we talk about a brushing protocol, which is like so diverse out in the world today in therapy services, and some of us old schoolers never learned it to be to desensitize tactile. I worked with brushing to wake up lazy muscles and to quiet excited muscles. And I still use it to that point today, and children are very successful in the use of that as a protocol. So try not to get too caught up in some of the protocols that are out there, because some of them can be very, very gently applied and not as time consuming for parents. Does anybody know about the Wilbarger brushing protocol? Yeah, it's pretty intense, and I'm not knocking them. I think they've got a great thing going there. But it's real intense for me. I don't know if I could do it as a therapist, and I would really struggle telling a parent to do it that amount of time when I've seen it successful as minimal as once or twice a week. The more the better, though. I do buy that, because that's the program. But it really is specifically for tactile defensiveness. But I have a lot of our children that have low tone and lots of stretchy joints, like I call them my pretzel men, my pretzel people. But that's kind of the way you're born. I mean, think of all the people in Cirque du Soleil that squeeze themselves up into that. Okay? That's just the way people are born. You're hypermobile, double jointed. I mean, there's a lot of terms that we can use for those. So that's when you start to realize that muscle kinesthetic information is going to be a problem. And oftentimes it is. It usually affects strength and endurance. So kids will start with a great pencil grip, and 5 words in, and 10 words in, their endurance fades. And then they cannot give you a whole sentence by the end, because they're not strong enough in their muscles to maintain stability long enough to write the whole sentence. Okay? And those of you that have kids that write and fall on the floor, those are your kids with some midline issues too. Little trick for teacher, even parents. Children with visual midline issues, children with body midline issues, don't often make T's like this. Okay? And forget an X. Diagonals are out. Okay? If they can't do a diagonal, or they take the paper and they go whoosh, and make a vertical and horizontal to make the X and turn it, that's good thinking, but that means there's an issue with midline. They can't see beyond midline. Oftentimes you'll see things like this. Right? Can you see that? Or even with body parts, they're all disconnected. You'll see bodies like that. Okay? There's no connection. Oftentimes that's right there. Your kinesthetic senses are off. Things to do: jump, bounce, wiggle, squeeze, push, pull, roll. Anything you want to do to get that body going. A lot of heavy duty work. Wake those muscles up. And what better place than outside? Climbing trees, rolling down hills, kicking stones down a cobblestone road. We don't need lots of money for play on the outside. You really don't. Although moms and dads, I know, you could use some of that, right? Because all of us need time. But still, a lot of kids that need to get out and play need to get out and play and move and wiggle and move and wiggle. Anybody else got questions? The question is basically testing for pain levels, okay? Everything sensory-wise is nerve system, your nervous system. So if your nerves don't get the information right, if the input is weak, the throughput is troubled, and the output is funny. But if you truly can't feel, then the nerves, there's a problem in them themselves. There's a chemical imbalance because nerves talk to each other. They're like a lot of, think of like tree branches, right? And if you're familiar with the body and the nervous system, it really is just like your veins, it just kind of goes throughout your body. And every now and then, they have these little spots. I'm not going to get real technical. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. All right, so here's a nerve, and that goes that way. And then here's another nerve. Okay? Now, depending upon the person, there's chemicals that jump between here. Okay? That's like we call it a synapse or a break. So when these chemicals go across, there's a whole bunch of them. I'll give you a good example. Smokers, anti-smokers. I'm like in and out of the realm, so, okay? One of these little chemicals is called nicotinic acid. The body naturally produces it, okay? It's part of what makes our nerves go and excites them. When you smoke, you replace the nicotinic acid with the nicotine from the cigarettes, right? So when you quit smoking, the nicotinic acid needs to build itself back up because it started depleting because you were replacing it. And that's why you get heebie-jeebies. For children with pain thresholds, something isn't talking here, okay? Or something isn't right in the wiring. Does that make sense? Where they actually do not feel pain. But my questions would be, you say she bumps in a table and has a meltdown. Oh, you've gotten a bloody nose from her bumping her knee.
Yes.
She's using you as just her object of anger.
Now, they said it could be connected with concussions. Could that affect
It could, yep. I have like 1,000 questions in my head. Like, where did she fall from? How was she holding it? What part of her head was injured? I mean, because that's really what a doctor's kind of going to do, is look at every piece of that. What you want to be careful, though, is when she has a meltdown, if she bumps something, did she see it? How much is the fight or flight response is getting in the way of the response for her?
I've seen her purposely run into things and have no effect.
Yeah. I can't even tell you how much weight I put on some kids. And I question, like, I'm gonna break their body if I keep putting more weight on them. That would be wise for a test. Even I would recommend that. If you're not feeling pain at all, that's not a good thing. But does that make a little more sense neurologically? Because that's really where it all comes from. That's where all of this is coming from, is through these nerves and these nerves' ability to talk to each other. I just recently, I'm a Netflix, when I type my reports, I have to have something going on because I'm sensory. And I downloaded, I'm trying to remember the name of it, Babies, I'll find it though. It's on Netflix and it's by the National Geographic, Babies Unborn, or something to that effect. But if you really want a good understanding of development, neurological development, that was a really good video. I've sent a few of my parents to that particular, it's an hour show. However, there's only one thing I disagree with it, is they did not do enough studies on crawling. They kind of negated crawling, and I was a little frustrated with it. But neurologically, it's a very good learning video to help you understand how the brain learns in both sides and the importance of if a system gets down. So for an example, if there's an infant that has a lazy eye and you wonder why they patch the other eye, so that lazy eye can catch up, okay? And that's from the neurological pathways, because this eye's doing all the learning. The lazy eye isn't. And as soon as you take away the good eye, the lazy eye starts to produce proper pathways, then it can self-correct. You have to equalize the patterns. Swings and spinning. If you spin to the right, you need to spin to the left. Okay? You have to try to remember to always equalize patterns to the right and left side of the brain in all of your play, every bit of your play. Even in school and learning, it's good to have kids not ship their papers all over the place. Especially older classrooms, if you really got a kid that's like doing a lot of this, you want to check some visual stuff because it may be getting in their way.
Like in my head.
It might be behavior, but she's getting very violent with you from
Oh, yeah.
my assumption. Okay,
Just
all right. But that's okay, that's normally, mums take it all.
Right.
Mums get it all, right? Mums, we get it all. I still get it, my kids are in their 30s. You know, if you weren't yeller at me, then I wouldn't have turned out neurotic. I'm just kidding. But it's true. Children grow up and they're always going to take it out on mums. But that just says to me, boy, our arousal level is out of control and she is resorting to the only thing she knows, and deep input is what calms. That's why you get the violence. Because the more I pound and the more I slam and the more I beat, the more I get input. Do you throw her in a blanket and wrap her up?
If you tried that, it increases it.
All right, then she's got too much cognitive power over her adrenaline. Because that's what will happen, is they'll push away what they're seeking. I've had that happen a lot.
Saves things being thrown at me.
Is safety. Well, let me put it this way, if I ever get enough money to build a clinic, I will have a padded room for kids that do that and make it safe. Because if you can't intervene for them, they have to learn on their own. Just like you leave a baby cry to let it fall asleep because it has to learn how to self-soothe. And a lot of children that were not allowed to self-soothe that way are oftentimes our more difficult kids down the road because they don't know how to do it. Just like a lot of our kids don't do good social interactive play because it's scheduled. We don't just have social lives anymore, we have scheduled lives. We're scheduled to meet these people and we're scheduled to meet these people, right? That really is the way our world has moved into, which is kind of sad that we have to kind of go that way, and it's an understanding that we have to do that for the safety of, my gosh, it's just horrible out there nowadays, and the way we have to really be protective of all our children is kind of sad, but that's a result of that. Unfortunately, you know what we get on our end when the older kids are coming in going, can you believe my mother set up a play date? And these are my 5-year-olds. They get a little unnerved about that. So sometimes little maybe communication with what they would like might help too on both ends.
Amazing.
Right. I call it the ready-made world.
Yeah.
Everything's right there. Touch happens. Touch happens. Wah happens. Right? I see it all the time, and you know what? I'm as guilty as everybody else. Part of where I'm at today is because of what mistakes I made as being my own mother of children with needs and typical. So, and I'm on my grandchildren watching them go through it all too. So, you get a different perspective as you go down the road. I will say that 21 years is a long time of watching this stuff. But absolutely right on that, though. It is a ready-made world. But I'm kind of joking with you about early intervention because I'm an old EI lady, and I love EI, and I love its philosophy. And the one thing that challenged me the most as a clinician was walking into the homes with nothing in my hands. Because in the most natural environment, people don't bring toys into natural environments per se all the time, because then they associate you with the toys instead of the pots and pans that family has. Do you understand?
Oh, I understand.
So, you know, when you get into that natural environment stuff, you really have to be careful out there, because really the role of early intervention, from my understanding of the 20-odd years I've been in there, is your primary role is really not as a clinician, but as a developmental specialist to help the families learn and understand and enable them to be empower them. Right. Sorry, you're right. And you know what? I dreamt that last night. I was going to screw that up. I actually went through this in my head last night in my dream, and I said, I know I'm going to say that word wrong. But empower them, because you want to empower them. And I've got a lot of families that come from EI, and these people don't even have secondary insurances, and they've got a child with really intensive needs. And I always felt that that was something early intervention should do, is make sure these parents are ready to face the world when their child hits 3. And that means secondary insurances if they need it. If that child is diagnosed autistic, then they better have a secondary insurance to face the world. Because these co-pays and this insurance crapola, sorry, it's just crazy. And you know who pays the price? Is those children that we work with every day. And that's why I do this out of my house. Because they don't pay enough for these kids. And it's so sad to see the need that's out there. And we all constantly have a waiting list. 20 years later, and I'm still on a waiting list. And that's really a sad statement to say, that insurances do not help a lot of our families get the services that they really, really need. And they don't support the school districts in the way they need as well. And I'm not into politics, I'm really not. I just wish everybody could balance things out so these children don't pay the price, because they are our future. That's who's going out there, guys. That's who's going to be with your children and your grandchildren's children. And if we don't help them get along and stop making a ready-made world, but allow their bodies to truly develop the proper way and learn the proper way, instead of this forced in a chair, jam it in their heads, and just let them learn the way they should. It doesn't take a lot. That's what I see. It's not going to take thousands of dollars. You'll have a better classroom. You'll have a happier classroom. You have quieter sessions. And you have parents who come out stronger in the future, because at 3, you're done in EI. And that's what I always hated. And that's one of the reasons I stepped out and did Kids OT, is because the school district, well, we can't service them because that's a medical issue. It's not an academic issue. So I can't do handwriting. I mean, I can't do the neurological issues with the child. I have to do handwriting issues, but that's not the problem. And it gets frustrating out there, and I know hundreds of you that I've talked to over the years have given me your problems as well as your positives, and that's how you grow and you learn, and you continue programs like this, and you support and back them up, because this is really where it's at, from EI all the way up. It has to be a team. You know, my favorite saying is, it takes a neighborhood to raise a child, right? Is that the way it's said? Did I say that right? I'm always messing those up. A village, that's right.
A little bit more than a neighborhood.
That's okay. But, you know, in EI, if you really, those that do work in the EI, though, if you really want to challenge yourself, keep your toy bag in your car. I mean, because I always had toys with me. I brought them in and brought them out, and I took donations, and if families didn't have anything, I left those donations and walked away. But I'm just saying, because every time I get into EI, they always say to me, well, do you want to bring them into your clinic, or you're going to do home-based services? Because EI is home-based services. And I'm done driving. I salute you. I like staying home and playing them downstairs, and we do it all together. Any other questions? Did I cover everything for everybody? I feel like I was like kind of all over the world. Exercises for oversensitive to stimuli. I was going to say, how old is the child?
It was too much at once.
Okay, so, but let me just stop you for a second. So she's overstimulated, and one of the things is spatial areas.
Correct.
Okay, things for that, baseball caps, big brim hats, take out the world.
As well.
I'm going to piece it down for you, because you got to dress everything. Touch is basically, what is she wearing, because that's what's going to get in her space. And then how do you best guide her through the environments you need to? A firm grip on an elbow, just being near her. So there's a couple of different ways, but I need to know the kid better.
I'm very concerned about.
Tactile defensiveness is a tough issue because if you think neurologically, the highest area of those neurons is your mouth. That's where our mouth, that's why everybody goes to their mouth. Second area of highest input for sensory is, because lots of kids are here, the Michael Jackson, yeah. Okay, mouth, genitals, palms, soles, then disbursement throughout the limbs. That's how your touch interprets in your body, okay? But when you see a lot of this and this, there's sensory stuff going on. And that can be addressed. And that's I use a soothing program for that, but that's something I'd
Yeah, we've stayed with.
check with me after and I can
We've stayed
discuss it
with
with
a
you.
general doctor, so like.
Although I've worked with older kids and we've corrected this problem through the brushing program. I will pull that in. I don't use the intensity the Wilbargers recommend, but when you're tactily defensive, the world is very... I didn't see what you did. He's my squeeze machine. You change every day. So I really can't give you a direct answer to that. It really is, I got to talk to you kind of alone about that and find out where the levels are, where you can tap in and adjust, okay? Because you can change this, you can change the nervous system. Nerves are pliable at no matter what age. I mean, with elderly that had strokes, we used to use the same philosophy. We would brush and wake up the muscle and stretch it and get it moving and mobile. Who else was in rehab besides me? Yeah. I mean, so really, you're using it as a facilitatory technique, but it also works for the tactile. And that can be just bath puffs. Just hit me up at the end and I'll go over something with you and to try, okay? All right, now I had a question over here.
Our daughter.
The question is hypersensitivity to sounds. Okay, that's a big problem for a lot of kids. One of the things that I have found to be most successful for hypersensitivity is actually, it's called the listening program. And I kind of want to jump back onto what your comment was earlier about the brain programs within school districts, because these are things that can be used within certain environments. Let me do the listening program first. It's a program that is designed to work with brain waves and brain patterns. And what you do is they talk you into buying the whole program, which is quite expensive because you're supposed to use it every single day, except weekends, and you go through the levels of 10 programs up and down. We bought it as a clinic, and we use it once a week, and I figured if it helps once a week, these kids are going to tell me, and sure enough, they have. And I find it to be successful, and I've used it with some of my little binkers with auditory stuff, and I've used it with my high school kids and the older kids, and they love it. But you really should work with a certified person, and you can go online and look for it. Alternatives to that, it's called hemi-sync music, okay? And it's just the way that it's embedded with sound, and you put it in a stereo system, and you just play it like in the back. I play it all the time in clinic. We always have our hemi-sync going. It's always a quiet environmental sound in the back. The listening program is a headphone system. It's more intense and more specific to helping that. Yes, it does help. It helps me, because this buzz is not killing me. Normally, I'd be like, really, I don't know, pay attention to body mechanics, but I get stressed with loud sounds, and I like that program, and I've used it myself on occasion. So those are some of the things for auditory stuff. Unfortunately, it really is just trying to teach and learn and practice on auditory stuff. The programs that you can embed for brain learning within the curriculum are Brain Gym, and I know that, I'm going to say Susan, I think her name is, but she does a course at Bay Path. Brain Gym is an excellent program used in school districts. Many school systems have used it. I know Sturbridge uses it a lot because I just know that they use it there, and they use it in a couple places in Worcester. But you got to kind of take a training on it. But once you learn it, it's an amazing program, really good for school districts. Another program for OTs that are in schools is, it's called a Jumpstart Menu. Okay? Now I understand my borrowed one is lost in this building somewhere. So if it should surface, but what I did with the Jumpstart menu, it was like a $10, $15 booklet, but we made cards for teachers and laminated them so you have the picture, and then on the back it tells you what you're supposed to do. There are 10 cards that help increase levels of attention. And then there are 10 cards that work on arousal. I forget exactly which one they are. I haven't used them in a while. But they're exactly what you were talking about earlier, is like, okay, now we're going to get to writing. Okay, let's do our jump start, and then do your jump start arousal. Get them wake up and whatever, wiggles, songs, whatever. But it's kind of like a guided plan for what you were doing randomly in your classroom. So, yeah. Kids need to move. That really is the bottom line. They need to move and they need to groove. And the more you sing and groove with them, the happier they're going to be. They just enjoy that. They enjoy when adults are kid-like. Come and play with us. You'd never know the difference. We're all on the floor and we're all on our hands and knees and playing some sort of something. And our music is on. All right, I didn't notice any other hands.
And it is very important.
One thing I try to really embellish my moms on, because I use an EI philosophy. When you come to Kids OT, the first thing I tell you is, come on, I would really like you back here, because the more I teach you, the better the child is going to be. I don't like locking my doors and hiding. I don't have to hide. I can't fix a kid in an hour. I own up to it. I'm sorry, I'm not God. But in that hour, I can educate you so that you can have 50 hours of knowledge for your child. And then how much progress can happen in that sense, you know? So it really is on education of look at your child, see what they're playing, and see what they're doing. Because that's where you really got to catch it, is you got to watch them. And then you got to figure out, oh, they're rolling down the hill. Let's roll down the hill with them. Because it's fun. Do you really like people like this? How many have bosses that are always on their backs? I mean, I was a single mom too. And I had 3 kids, full-time school, part-time work. It wasn't easy. This man came in a lot later. But I will never deny being happy about it. Sweetie pie. It does help with a good man, I do have to say. However, one of the things as a parent that I went through a lot was all that guilt. It's my fault. I did something wrong. It's because I married that jerk. Or you can blame the whole world on whatever it was. But really, you didn't do anything wrong. You were given the child that you were supposed to have because you were the only one that can be with them. Because that's what your higher power told me. That's what my higher power tells me. I don't promote anything on anybody. I have a higher power, and he runs my life. And he gave me what I know I deserved. And they were 3 beautiful children. And then they had a couple issues. But they were children first. And I was their mommy first. I was not that good old OT that had to fix his broken body because of my guilt. I'm going to play with that kid, and I'm going to play with them because I love them. And they're my children, and they are who they are. I'm not perfect. Why did I expect perfection? Because that's really what we do as parents. A good book for parents, and I know in other EI programs that I've worked in around in Massachusetts, it's called A Difference in the Family. And it's by Heather Featherstone. You might want to write that down. Any parents, if you're feeling inside confusion, guilt, shame, doubt, grief, I highly recommend that book. because both as a clinician and as a mother, it just, you got to read it, because it really taught me how to be a mom. And that's why I kind of teach that a lot with a lot of classes. Because we forget sometimes. We always want to make it right. But the best thing to do is just play with them, because they already had everything taught to them. They don't need it taught again. They needed to integrate it into playing. Okay? My instructor all day said, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you. Okay, I'm playing with my kid and I fall down and I pick up a toy and I hand it to him and he says, thank you. Hello. That's how the world works. It goes around and around and around. We don't all have to be teachers. We all have our own role. You're the ABA person, you're the mommy, I'm the OT, and all of it should happen in play for us moms and dads. Any other questions? Because I could go on and 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 on. Let me hear that. One of the things about running a clinic, a pediatric clinic like this, is we do a lot of voodoo work because we're working with a sensory system that isn't validated in our medical world. So therefore, insurance companies don't like us, and they don't pay for it. And then what happens is those children that really seriously need the services are stuck with nothing because he doesn't need it in school. There's no academic problems. So let's just pile up all that sensory stuff till we get home and have total meltdowns and dishevelment. But insurances won't allow for the services. And that's really, I'm just stuck with you, honey. I'll still talk to anybody, you know I will. One of the things I'd like to see is the changes in the schools, but also in our community, and try to bring more programs in for things like that. Busybodies does not mean that I'm not paying attention. And I think that's the biggest concern, is because a lot of teachers complain that they're busybodies and they can't sit still, but they're learning everything you can teach them. And my question to the school district and to teachers is, so why do they have to sit? What's the problem there? What is the real reason? It's like when teachers used to come to me and say, my kid's got a handwriting problem. Could you come take a peek? And I go down to the classroom and I go peek in there. And they're doing the handwriting class and the desk is up here and the kid is like this. Oh, thank you very much. Well, let's fix the desk and then we'll see if there's a handwriting problem. Okay? Can you write with your desk up here? So sometimes it's a simple solution to a bigger problem. So you kind of got to go back and analyze some of the situations too. Why does he have to sit still in a chair if he can learn without that? And that really is, that's a worldwide issue, hon. You're not alone facing that one. Because sometimes those people in EI, just a little FYI, when you see those babies spinning wheels, they're looking for vestibular responses. They're not stimulating on spinning wheels. Okay? Especially our little ones with autism, that you really think they're perseverating on those, spinning those wheels. They are seeking vestibular information because that's so closely connected neurologically. So you might want to add some vestibular movement and play, put them in a blanket and bounce them a little bit, okay? Just a hint. I've just kind of been finding more and more indicators that it's not all perseverative play when the little ones do some of that, okay? Just a precursor to later on vestibular stuff. You might want to just bring them in for testing, because I got like tons and tons of questions to say, okay, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? So it's not as clear cut as to why. I mean, I want to see what his muscles look like, what's his tone, how does he move, you know, is he kinesthetically getting what he needs, or has he adapted along the way? Because some kids are very intelligent. It has nothing to do with cognition. It has to do with muscle development. And if their muscles don't formulate in the right direction. Sometimes they can just be too weak and too exhausting to do the physical work, so they resort to a lot of fine motor stuff. And her question was about her son, 7 years old, that has a lot of movement and coordination, likes quiet play. But one thing you'd want to remember, though, is sometimes look around your family members. And I know that sounds silly, but if you look around your family members, you're going to find, well, he's kind of a laid-back, quieter kind of person, and wow, that nephew is a spitfire and always in track and field and sports, and that one's a bookworm, okay? And I know I'm kind of like categorizing, but sometimes there's much to be said about genetics and your child's personality and just his desire to learn something different. Just because it looks odd to us may not be odd to them. Because I've had older kids tell me, Miss Anita, they think I'm, stupid because I really love dinosaurs and that's all I want to talk about. But kids are smart. They will be able to really clearly indicate some of the stuff. Sometimes it's the parents that have the issues because we're not asking the right questions. Because kids are concrete, very seriously concrete. But I would recommend a good motor assessment, just really look at the whole system across. And sometimes it's hard to answer those kinds of questions because question makes another question. Yeah. Anyone else? When you work with the tactile system, it's responsible for two things. Your touch, hot, rough, smooth, cold, okay? Our touch, what textures and things. But our tactile system is also responsible for our personal space, okay? So if I came right up into your personal space, you're gonna like, oh, he's in my face, right? We all have personal space. But if your touch receptors are, and your motor system, so now you got a dual thing, you got your touch centers aren't responding right to your body in space. And oh, by the way, my muscles and joints don't allow me to feel gravity, so I have to barrage the world to get it. Right? I have to barrage the world to get that input so I can feel myself on Earth. Okay? That may be more the issue. The question was, 2-year-old needs a lot of deep, deep information and is aversive to water and light touch. So again, you've got a tactile issue with a joint muscle issue, okay, which is really becoming very common. So I would do the brushing. I call it the soothing program because if I say brushing, then it indicates the Wilbarger's intensive plan, and I really don't want to invade on I respect their work. I just know that the program that I do, and I call it a soothing program, works just as good and is simple, and it doesn't add any more to your day than you already do. Anybody else? We answered all the questions. I think I did a good job. Are there any holes? I mean, did that make sense to you all, though? Because it's kind of simple, overcast understanding of sensory processing and how it all works.
Are night terrors common sense?
Night terrors are normal developmental. Most children go through a stage of night terrors. It's when they don't go away that then you start to need to address it. And usually behavioralists will work with you on that one, as far as that goes. Okay? Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you had a good lesson, and those of you that want to stay.